first story happened 2 years after she died. My wife woke me up in the middle of the night. I felt someone gently shaking my shoulder. "Wake up," a familiar voice whispered. "Wake up." I opened my eyes. The room was dark. Only a faint strip of moonlight slipped through the curtains. At first I thought I was dreaming, but then I heard her voice again. Quiet, nervous. "There's someone in our house." I sat up in bed, and I saw her, standing beside the bed, my wife, Alina. The same long hair, the same eyes, the same pale face. But that was impossible, because Alina had been buried 2 years ago. I couldn't move. My heart was beating so hard it felt like the entire room could hear it. She looked at me as if nothing strange was happening, as if this was just another ordinary night, as if she had simply come home. "I can't sleep," she whispered. Her voice sounded weak, almost broken. "Can I lie down next to you?" My mouth went dry. I wanted to say something, to ask questions, to scream, but no words came out. She slowly walked around the bed. The mattress sank as she climbed under the blanket, and then I felt it. Cold. She was freezing cold, like ice. She pressed closer to me and whispered again, "There's someone in our house." I tried to calm myself down. "This is a dream," I told myself. "Just a nightmare." I turned toward her. "Alina," I whispered. "You're..." But I couldn't finish the sentence. She was staring at me in the darkness, watching me very carefully. "I know what you're thinking," she said quietly, "but that doesn't matter right now." She squeezed my hand. "He's in the house." And then I heard it, a sound downstairs, a door slowly creaking open, then footsteps, slow, heavy. Someone really was inside the house. I sat up immediately. "Did you hear that?" She nodded. "He's already inside," she whispered. I got out of bed and grabbed my flashlight. The house was completely dark. The old wooden floor creaked under my feet. When I reached the staircase leading downstairs, the footsteps stopped. Silence. Total silence. I turned on the flashlight. The beam slowly moved across the walls, the floor, the old furniture. No one. I turned back toward the stairs. Alina was standing at the top, watching me. But something about her face had changed. She looked terrified. "Don't go downstairs," she said quietly. But it was too late. Because at that exact moment, my flashlight beam hit the mirror in the hallway, and I saw the reflection. In the mirror, I was standing on the stairs, alone. But behind me, higher on the staircase, there was another person. I spun around. The staircase was empty. Alina was gone. And then I heard a voice, right next to my ear. A cold whisper. "I told you, there's someone in the house." Slowly, I turned my head And suddenly I realized something. That voice was not Alina's voice. Because Alina never whispered. She always spoke loudly. She laughed. She filled the whole room with sound. But this voice, I had heard it only once before, 2 years ago, the night I killed my wife. I never believed in the supernatural. I always thought that everything in the mountains could be explained. Cold, altitude, exhaustion, lack of oxygen. But after that night in the mountains of Kyrgyzstan, I'm no longer sure I understand everything that happens in those places. It happened 3 years ago. We were a small group of climbers planning to cross a difficult route in the Tian Shan Mountains. There were 5 of us. Me, Mark, and my friends, Daniel, Thomas, Lucas, and Eric. We had been climbing together for years. Each of us had dozens of expeditions behind us. We were used to danger, cold nights, and harsh conditions. But that day we encountered something none of us had ever imagined. We had been hiking for nearly 10 hours. By evening, the sky darkened quickly, and the temperature dropped sharply. That's when we reached a small plateau between the rocks and saw a mountain lake. It sat in a stone basin, as if hidden from the rest of the world. The water was completely still. So still, it looked like black glass. No wind, no waves, no sound. Lucas looked around and said, "Perfect place for camp." We pitched our tents a little above the shore and started a small fire. While we were cooking dinner, I kept catching myself looking at the lake. There was something strange about it. At the same time, I wanted to look at it and didn't want to get any closer. Sometimes it felt like the surface of the water was slowly moving, even though there was no wind. Eric laughed and threw a stone into the lake. The stone hit the surface and ripples spread across the water. "Let's see if anything lives in there," he joked. We all laughed. But now, when I remember that moment, I often think that's when everything actually began. Around midnight, it became freezing cold. The fire burned down, and we went into our tents. I couldn't fall asleep for a long time. The night was too quiet. In the mountains, you usually hear wind or rocks shifting somewhere in the distance. But that night, there was complete silence. And then I heard a sound. At first it was faint, barely noticeable. It was coming from the direction of the lake. I listened carefully. The sound came again. It was strange. It sounded like crying, and at the same time like quiet laughter. I crawled out of my tent. The others were already awake. Thomas was standing outside, staring toward the water. "You hear that?" he asked quietly. We stood there in silence, listening, and again the sound echoed across the lake. Long, unnatural, as if someone was laughing and crying at the same time. It was coming directly from the water. Curiosity turned out to be stronger than caution. We grabbed our flashlights and walked toward the shore. When we reached the edge of the lake, there was no one there, but there was fog. A thick, low fog hovering right above the water. And inside that fog, we saw lights. Small, white lights. They floated slowly inside the mist, like fireflies. But at that altitude, there couldn't be any fireflies. We stood there watching. No one said a word. "You guys see that?" Daniel whispered. The lights moved slowly. Sometimes they disappeared. Then they appeared again, almost as if they were inviting us closer. We took a step forward, then another. The fog was cold, unnaturally cold. It clung to the skin. My head felt heavy, like my thoughts were slowing down. We kept walking. The lights grew brighter, and suddenly I felt something freezing against my legs. I pointed my flashlight downward, and my heart nearly stopped. I was standing in water, ice cold water. It was already up to my knees, but I hadn't even noticed walking into the lake. I grabbed Lucas immediately. "Back!" I shouted. He snapped out of it and looked down. Then he saw the water too. We pulled Thomas back with us. The three of us stumbled backward out of the fog, but Daniel and Eric were ahead of us. We could see their silhouettes through the mist. They kept walking, slowly, like they were sleepwalking. "Eric!" I shouted. "Daniel!" They didn't react. We screamed their names, shined our flashlights, but they acted like they couldn't hear us. Within seconds, their silhouettes faded inside the fog, and then they were gone. We searched for them almost the entire night. We shouted, walked along the shore, pointed our lights into the water, but we found nothing. No answer, no movement, only fog, and sometimes those white lights. At sunrise, we went for help. Rescue workers arrived several hours later. They searched the lake, walked the entire shoreline. Some of them even dived into the freezing water, but they found nothing. No bodies, no signs. It was as if Daniel and Eric had simply vanished. Later, they took us to a small mountain village nearby. We were supposed to stay there overnight before heading back. That evening, an old Kyrgyz man came to the house where we were staying. He was a shepherd who had lived in those mountains his entire life. He listened to our story quietly, without interrupting. When we finished, he sat silently for a long moment. Then he asked softly, "Did anyone warn you not to go to that lake at night?" We looked at each other. None of us had heard anything like that. The old man slowly shook his head. "In the mountains," he said, "every lake has its owner." He spoke so calmly, as if he were explaining something obvious. Sometimes the owner shows lights in the fog. People think it's just reflections, and they walk closer. But those are not lights. He is calling them. The room went silent. "And what happens to those who follow?" Lucas asked. The old man looked at us and said quietly, "He takes them." No one spoke. The old man continued, "In the mountains, you must not disturb the water at night. You must not throw stones. You must not shout. And you must never follow the lights. If the lake's owner calls you, it means he has chosen." The old man stood up and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he said one last thing. "You are lucky." We looked at him, confused. He added quietly, "He only took 2. Then he left. And only then I remembered something. Before everything happened, Eric had thrown a stone into the lake and laughed. At the time, it seemed like a harmless joke. But now, I think the lake's owner heard him. Several years have passed since that night, but sometimes I still have the same dream. I'm standing by that lake again. Fog slowly rises above the water, and inside it, white lights begin to glow. And every time, I feel the same thing, as if something inside that fog is watching me and waiting for the moment when I take one more step toward the water.